The calm before the storm, 5 to 7 minute hook. In the vast reaches of space, the galaxy had known peace for as long as most species could remember. The alien civilizations, though often very different from each other, had formed a delicate balance. The strong ruled, and the weak obeyed. It had been this way for eons, with every species knowing its place. Among these civilizations, there was one truth everyone accepted. No one ever dared challenge the power of the galaxy's most feared species, the Deathworlders. Deathworlders were humanity's finest warriors, born and bred on Earth, a planet that was a brutal and unforgiving world. It was a place where every living creature fought tooth and nail just to survive. Humanity had long since adapted to its harsh environment, developing extraordinary skills and strength. The Deathworlders had become the ultimate soldiers, with an unmatched capacity for violence, endurance, and willpower. The galaxy, however, knew none of this. They had heard stories of humans, but their knowledge was shallow. To the galaxy's leaders, humans were little more than a curiosity, an unremarkable species. They were isolated, primitive, and seemed to live in their own corner of the universe, far from the matters of the galactic powers. The ruling species, from the insectoid Tycheri to the cerebral Azephs, all believed they had no reason to fear such a species. For centuries, they lived their lives, focused on their endless wars and political intrigues, unaware of the quiet strength growing within humanity. And then it came, a signal. An alien species, weak and desperate, sent a call for help. The galaxy's powers would soon learn that this SOS would do more than just signal a plea for aid. It would set into motion a chain of events that would shake the foundations of the galaxy. The call had originated from a small, relatively unknown species known as the Varasians. Their planet, a lush and vibrant world, had once been a peaceful haven. But peace had a way of crumbling when the galaxy's most ruthless species came knocking. The Varasians had been living in harmony with their planet for millennia, never imagining a threat could destroy them. The Varasians had made a terrible mistake. They had angered one of the most brutal species in the galaxy, the Tarquini, a war-hungry, imperialistic race with a long history of conquest. The Tarquini had set their sights on Varasia, and there was nothing the Varasians could do to stop them. Faced with their inevitable destruction, the Varasians had sent out a distress signal, hoping for a miracle. At first, the galaxy barely noticed. The message was weak, poorly received, and seemed like just another distress call that would go unanswered. But then, something strange happened. The message found its way into the hands of an unlikely source: humanity. The humans had been on the periphery of galactic affairs, too busy dealing with their own conflicts on Earth to care about distant galaxies. But as the Varasian call made its way across the stars, the humans listened. And they understood something that no other species had. The Varasians weren't just in trouble, they were being hunted, and this hunt was being led by a species known for its cruelty and fearsome strength. The Tarquini were not a species to be underestimated. For millennia, they had waged war against species across the galaxy, leaving behind nothing but ruin. Their warriors were skilled, and their fleets were vast, but they lacked one crucial thing. They lacked the survival instincts that the humans had honed for generations. The Tarquini relied on strength and numbers, but humanity had something far more dangerous: an ability to think on the fly, to adapt, and to fight for survival at all costs. The moment the humans heard the call, they understood the stakes. There was no hesitation, no time wasted. In an instant, humanity's greatest warriors, the Deathworlders, were mobilized. Unlike the many galactic empires that relied on fleets of starships, advanced weapons, and grand military strategies, the Deathworlders did not need all of that. They were something far simpler, yet far more terrifying. Human beings who had fought and survived against the worst the universe could throw at them. They had adapted to the most extreme environments on Earth and beyond. And now, They were ready to unleash that terrifying might on the galaxy. The alien species, blissfully unaware of the storm approaching, continued their business as usual. They held their councils, made their alliances, and focused on their internal conflicts. To them, the distress call was just another insignificant cry for help. But they were wrong. The calm that had settled over the galaxy would soon be shattered. The Deathworlders were coming, and nothing could stop them. The galaxy's powerful empires, which had ruled with an iron fist, would soon learn the true cost of underestimating humanity. As the Deathworlders prepared to make their move, the universe had no idea what was coming. The first wave would be swift, brutal, and unrelenting. The galaxy, once a place where the strong ruled without question, would soon see its balance torn apart. The calm before the storm was over. The storm had arrived, and it would bring chaos, destruction, and the rise of humanity as the galaxy's new dominant force. The call answered. As the galaxy continued its routine, unaware of the impending chaos, something monumental was taking place in the distant fringes of space. In a hidden sector, far from the prying eyes of the established galactic powers, humanity's most feared warriors were preparing to answer the call. The Deathworlders, humanity's elite combat force, had received the Varasians' distress signal, and they were now gearing up for the battle that would change the course of galactic history. The Varasians had no idea what they had just unleashed. They had sent their call for help with a sense of hopelessness, believing that no one would come. Their planet was on the brink of annihilation, and they had no allies capable of standing against the Tarquini. Yet, what they didn't realize was that they had caught the attention of the most unpredictable, dangerous, and relentless species in the galaxy, the Deathworlders. The Deathworlders were a special breed of human. Unlike the ordinary people of Earth, who lived in cities and went about their lives, the Deathworlders were born and raised in the harshest environments known to humankind. From the blistering deserts of the Sahara to the frozen tundras of Siberia, these humans had been tested by the most brutal conditions imaginable. Their bodies had adapted to extreme temperatures, their minds sharpened by the constant need to survive. They were survivors by nature, and they thrived in environments where others would perish. When the call came, the Deathworlders did not hesitate. Within moments of hearing the Varasians' plea, they were mobilizing. Their ships, built for war and designed for survival in hostile environments, began to assemble. These ships were not like the sleek, pristine vessels of the galactic empires. They were rough, brutal, and functional, made for one purpose: to get their crew to the front lines and ensure victory. The command center for this operation was not a grand space station or a lavish galactic fortress. No, it was a simple command post, hidden deep within Earth's most secure military facility. Here the Deathworlder leaders gathered, preparing their strategies. They didn't need long meetings, political discussions, or endless debates. They only needed one thing: action. The leader of the Deathworlders, General Marcus Cole, stood before a holographic map of the galaxy, his face etched with years of battle-hardened experience. His voice, calm yet full of authority, echoed through the room as he addressed his commanders. "We're not here to negotiate," he said, his tone cold. "The Varasians asked for our help, and we're going to give it to them. We don't care how strong the Tarquini are. We don't care how many ships they have. They're going to learn what it means to face humanity." The commanders nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. They knew what was at stake. This wasn't just a rescue mission. It was a statement. It was humanity's chance to show the galaxy what it meant to anger a Deathworlder. There would be no mercy, no negotiations. The Tarquini had made a grave mistake, and they would soon pay for it. In the depths of the Varasian capital, the first signs of the approaching storm began to show. The Varasian leaders, once calm and collected, were beginning to panic. Reports came in of strange ships entering their system. Unfamiliar, rough-looking vessels that appeared out of nowhere. They were human ships, but the Varasians had no way of knowing who they belonged to. All they knew was that these ships were not like anything they had seen before. They weren't here to negotiate. They were here to fight. Desperation began to creep in. The Varasian council members, once hopeful that some powerful ally would come to their aid, now feared that they had made a mistake. Had they called for help too late? Were the Deathworlders really their salvation, or were they simply bringing more destruction? Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the Deathworlders were not wasting time. Their fleet had already jumped into the Varasian system, and the crews of the ships prepared for battle. The sight of their ships alone was enough to send a chill down the spines of any who saw them. They were grim and merciless, designed for one thing: total annihilation. These ships didn't fly with grace. They flew with purpose. On board each vessel, the Deathworlder warriors were gearing up for combat. Their armor was made for survival in the harshest environments, tough, impenetrable, and designed to withstand the most extreme conditions. They were ready for anything, and their weapons were more deadly than anything the galaxy had seen before. As the first shots were fired in the Varasian system, the galaxy began to understand that humanity was not just another species. Humanity had come to fight. Humanity had come to win. The Tarquini, who had once thought their empire invincible, were about to learn a harsh truth. They were not the biggest predators in the galaxy. Humanity's Deathworlders had arrived, and they were hungry for victory. The calm before the storm was over. Now, the galaxy would witness the true might of humanity. The battle unfolds. The first clash between the Deathworlders and the Tarquini was swift and brutal. The Varasians watched in disbelief as the battle began to unfold. Their once pristine space was now a war zone, a place where the rules of engagement were written in blood and fire. The Deathworlders had arrived with one singular purpose: to dominate, to destroy, and to show the galaxy that humanity was a force to be reckoned with. The Tarquini, despite their advanced technology and formidable weaponry, were no match for the Deathworlder fleet. From the very first moment the Deathworlder ships entered the battlefield, it was clear that the galaxy's expectations of warfare had just been shattered. The Deathworlder vessels, though smaller and less refined than their Tarquini counterparts, were far more deadly. They were built for the harshest conditions, designed for a world where survival was not guaranteed, and they were now proving that the greatest weapons were not always the most advanced. They were the most brutal. The Deathworlder ships immediately engaged the Tarquini forces. The clash of energy shields and weapons fire filled the space around the Varasian planet, lighting up the dark expanse like a deadly firework display. But it wasn't fireworks. This was war, and it was a war unlike any the galaxy had seen before. Inside the Deathworlder ships, the warriors prepared for close combat. These were not soldiers who relied on remote-controlled drones or automated weapons. These were humans, trained to fight with their hands, their minds, and their fierce will to survive. The Tarquini, for all their might, were unprepared for the sheer ferocity and adaptability of the Deathworlders. General Marcus Cole stood at the helm of the flagship, watching the battle unfold through the main view screen. His face was a mask of calm concentration, but behind his eyes, there was a spark of excitement. He had been in many battles, fought countless wars, but something about this one felt different. The Tarquini had made a grave mistake in underestimating humanity, and now they would pay for it. The aftermath. A galaxy changed forever. The silence that followed the battle was deafening. The vast void of space, once filled with the roar of laser fire and the deadly hum of energy blasts, was now eerily quiet. But the destruction left behind spoke volumes. The Tarquini fleet had been all but wiped out, their ships drifting aimlessly or burning as they slowly disintegrated. The Deathworlders had made their statement, loud, clear, and unyielding. On the surface of Varasia, the once vibrant capital was now a city in mourning, though no one dared to shed a tear for the fallen enemy. The Varasians had watched the Deathworlder forces in action, their eyes wide with a mixture of awe and fear. The battle had been unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen before. In less than 48 hours, the Tarquini, a race once feared throughout the galaxy for their military might, had been reduced to nothing. General Marcus Cole stood on the bridge of his flagship, his eyes scanning the remains of the battlefield. He felt no triumph, no pride in their victory. For him, it was merely another day on the job. Humanity's war machine had been unleashed, and they had crushed their enemies with the ruthless efficiency that came from centuries of surviving on a death world. But it wasn't personal. It was just the way they fought. Survival was all that mattered. As the fleet began to regroup and head back toward Verasia, the Verasian leadership approached the Deathworlder commanders. They had seen what the Deathworlders were capable of, and now they needed to decide what to do next. The galaxy was a different place after this battle. No longer would the Verasians cower in fear of other races. No longer would they have to worry about the shadow of the Tarquini looming over them. Humanity had shown them that survival was not about advanced technology, nor was it about alliances. It was about strength. It was about the will to do whatever it took to survive. The Verasians had thought they were alone in their fight. They had hoped for peace, for a galaxy where they could negotiate, where diplomacy and politics could lead the way. But humanity had shattered that illusion. The galaxy was no longer a place of peaceful coexistence. It was a battleground, and the Deathworlders had shown that they were the dominant force. Now, with the destruction of the Tarquini fleet, the Verasians had a new reality to face. They were no longer the top dogs. They were a smaller player in a galaxy now dominated by humans who could, and would, fight for survival with an unmatched ferocity. The galaxy, once a peaceful realm of politics and diplomacy, had now shifted to one where power was everything. The Verasians were left to rebuild, but not before understanding that they had just witnessed the death of their old way of life. The galaxy would never look the same again. As the Deathworlder fleet prepared to depart, many of the Verasians couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. What other races, what other enemies, might humanity decide to face next? And what would happen if the Deathworlders ever turned their gaze toward the Verasians? Though they had made a show of alliance, they were still fearful. No one had ever fought like this before, and the events of the past few days had only confirmed that humanity was a force to be feared. The once proud Tarquini Empire had been brought to its knees by humanity's Deathworlders. But what about the rest of the galaxy? What would stop humanity from setting their sights on other races, other civilizations? As the Deathworlders left Verasia and their fleet turned away, leaving behind a devastated enemy and a shaken galaxy, one question lingered in the air. Would humanity's might ever be challenged again? The answer was unknown, but one thing was certain. The galaxy had just learned an important lesson. Never underestimate the Deathworlders, because once they decided to fight back, the galaxy itself would tremble in fear. The fear spreads across the galaxy. The message was clear, and the galaxy was trembling. News of humanity's victory over the Tarquini Empire spread like wildfire across the stars. Every corner of the galaxy, from the glittering spires of the Verasian capital to the far reaches of the Alcaran fringe, buzzed with conversations about the Deathworlders' shocking display of raw, unrelenting power. Leaders of galactic nations huddled in dark, secure rooms, poring over intelligence reports and wondering if they were next on humanity's list. The Deathworlders had never cared for diplomacy, nor had they needed it. But now, the fear of their unstoppable might had begun to seep into the hearts of every alien leader. Humanity, once considered a mere nuisance in the grand scheme of galactic politics, had proven itself to be a force that could no longer be ignored. On the outer rim, a small, technologically advanced race known as the Xantir was the first to voice their concerns. "We've heard the stories, but now they've made their mark," said Xantir Admiral Korek, his sharp features flickering with unease on the holographic screen. "The Tarquini were our allies, and they were obliterated. If they could fall, so can we." His voice cracked, though the Xantir had long prided themselves on their composure. Korek was not the only one feeling the pressure. The high councils of dozens of galactic civilizations now convened in emergency sessions. The most powerful of the councils, an alliance of races that had long dominated the galaxy, was scrambling to come up with a defense strategy. But there was one undeniable truth that none could escape. Humanity's Deathworlders were beyond any conventional strategy they had ever encountered. "We cannot defeat them with our armies," said Varasian General Rylus, his voice cold and steady. The Varasians had long been hailed as one of the most powerful and sophisticated races in the galaxy. But the image of the Deathworlder fleet's sheer ferocity was fresh in their minds. "We need more than weapons and tactics. We need to outthink them. We need something unexpected." A shadow had settled over the council chamber as those present understood the weight of his words. The once feared Tarquini, with all their military might, had been reduced to rubble. What did that mean for the future of the galaxy? Could any race stand against humanity's wrath? Meanwhile, back on Earth, Marcus Cole and the commanders of the Deathworlder fleet had no such concerns. For them, it was simply another victory, another successful mission. The galaxy had shown its weakness, and humanity had exploited it. There were no apologies, no negotiations, only the cold, hard truth. Survival was the only law that mattered. Cole stood before his fleet, a tall, grim figure surrounded by the powerful and dangerous warriors of Earth. Their eyes, hardened by countless battles on their homeworld, glinted with anticipation. They were eager for what came next. Another conquest, another challenge to overcome. "The galaxy thinks it can challenge us," Cole said, his voice carrying the weight of decades of battle. "They think they can stop us with treaties, with fear, or with alliances. But they forget one thing. We are not afraid. We've been forged in the fires of our death world, and we will conquer every last corner of this galaxy." As he spoke, a sense of eerie calm fell over his warriors. The Deathworlders were a race that thrived in chaos, their strength coming from the very world they came from. A world where survival was a constant struggle, where the strongest were the only ones who made it to the top. There was no room for weakness. The galaxy had seen nothing yet. The councils of the galaxy, from the technologically advanced Kalteri to the insectoid Tsar, had underestimated humanity. They had relied on their diplomacy, their armies, and their advanced technology to keep the balance of power. But humanity had never cared for the rules of their games. The Deathworlders understood one thing more than anything else. Power was not won through politics or trickery. It was won through strength, through sheer will, and the ability to survive when others faltered. "Prepare yourselves," Marcus Cole said, stepping down from the podium, his voice now low and commanding. "The galaxy will bend to our will, and anyone who stands in our way will fall. We are Deathworlders, and we do not know how to lose." As his words echoed through the fleet, the commanders nodded in agreement. This was not just a victory. It was the beginning of a new era, one where humanity's power would be felt across every star system, from the farthest reaches of the galaxy to its very heart. The other races had one option left: to either submit to humanity's overwhelming might or prepare for the inevitable war that would sweep through the galaxy. The Deathworlders would not rest until every last threat to humanity was extinguished. It was a new age of power, and humanity was ready to claim it. The fear had spread far and wide, but no one knew just how far humanity would go to secure its place at the top, and no one could stop them. The galaxy's reckoning. The galaxy was watching, waiting, and terrified. Across the expanse of the stars, each race began to feel the weight of humanity's rise. From the corporate-controlled sectors of the Mesara to the ancient warriors of the Othran Reach, there was a growing sense of inevitability. It was no longer a matter of whether humanity would conquer. It was a question of how much time they had left. The Deathworlder fleet had given a glimpse of their power, but now the true force behind it was about to unfold. Humanity's fleet, commanded by Marcus Cole, was not just a military force. It was a statement. The galaxy had, for too long, underestimated the resilience of Earth's warriors. Now, they would see the consequences of that mistake. The Tsar, the insectoid race once believed to be the pinnacle of strategic warfare, had already begun to reconsider their plans. Their militaristic society, built on calculated conquest and precision, was no match for the raw brutality of humanity's force. The Tarquini Empire, once a powerful ally of several galactic factions, had been reduced to a shadow of its former self. Their fleets scattered, their colonies in ruins, all in the wake of the human onslaught. But the galaxy was not entirely powerless. Not yet. High in the councils of the Varasians, a new plan was being devised. The galaxy's greatest minds had come together to find a way to counter the Deathworlders. The Varasians were not a race to surrender easily. They had faced crises before and always managed to find a way to adapt. But this time, it was different. Humanity was not like any enemy they had ever faced. The Deathworlders' sheer unpredictability, their willingness to fight with an intensity that broke all known laws of warfare, left even the most strategic minds grasping for answers. "The time for diplomacy has passed," General Rylus said grimly. "We are facing an enemy that does not think like us, does not fear like us, and does not respect the boundaries we hold dear. Humanity's Deathworlders know no limits. They will not stop until they have claimed every last corner of this galaxy." His words struck a chord with everyone in the room. The Varasians, once the shining example of galactic civilization, now found themselves facing an existential threat. And they were not alone. The Kalteri, the Othran, the Xantir, all had felt the shockwave of humanity's rise. The alliances that had once kept the galaxy in check now seemed fragile, even irrelevant, in the face of the unstoppable force that was the Deathworlders. Meanwhile, Marcus Cole and his commanders knew that they were not just fighting for territory or power. They were fighting for survival, for the very soul of humanity. The galaxy had given them no choice. The other races had treated humanity like an insignificant speck in the grand universe. But now, they were the ones who would feel the crushing force of a race that had been forged in the fires of Earth's brutal environment. "There's no turning back now," Cole said, standing in front of his fleet, his expression unreadable. "The galaxy is ours to shape. We will not be stopped. Not now. Not ever." As he looked out at the horizon of space, the fleet ready to move, he knew the war was not over. It had only just begun. The galaxy would bend to humanity's will, or it would be broken in the process. And so, the Deathworlders marched forward, the galaxy trembling at their every move. With each star they passed, with each system they took, the fear grew. The other races could only watch as humanity's power spread, like a wildfire consuming everything in its path. The reckoning had come, and there was no escape. Humanity's Deathworlders would not rest until the galaxy was theirs. All that remained was for the other races to accept their fate, or face the consequences of resisting the inevitable. The universe had never seen anything like this before. The Deathworlders were coming, and nothing could stop them.